Graceful morning, children. Gibran says that it has been said that next to hunger and thirst, our most basic human need is for storytelling. Today, we are going to read a story based on a storytelling. Come, dears. Ishwaran, the storyteller. This story was written by Mr. Orkane Lakshman. Rasipuram Krishnaswamy Iyer Lakshman was an Indian cartoonist, illustrator, and humorist. He is best known for his creation, The Common Man, and for his daily cartoon strip. His brother R.K. Narayan also was a well known writer. Before we enter into the story, let's see the characters of the story. Mahendran. He was a junior supervisor in a firm which offered on hire, whose job is to check the work of all the other people. He was a bachelor. Ishwaran. He was Mahendra's cook. The cook was quite attached to Mahendra and followed him wherever he was posted. He would weave out endless stories and anecdotes on varied subjects. He would try to work in suspense and a surprise ending into the account. Next one, Ganesh. He is a passive character in this story. This character is inactive. The story was narrated to Ganesh, Ishwaran, the storyteller. One night, Mahendra woke up from his sleep and saw a dark, cloudy form. He broke out into a cold sweat. Was it a ghost? The story was narrated to Ganesh by a young man. So, Ganesh is the passive character here. Okay. Mahendra by name. Who told the story to Ganesh? Yes, Mahendra. He was a junior supervisor in a firm which offered on hire supervisors at various types of construction sites, factories, bridges, dams, and so on. Mahendra's job was to keep an eye on the activities at the work site. He had to keep moving from place to place every now and then as ordered by his head office. From a coal mining area to a railway bridge construction site, from there after a few months to a chemical plant which was coming up somewhere. So, Mahendra narrated a story about his cook Ishwaran to Ganesh. Mahendra worked as a junior supervisor, yes, in a company. He had to change places often and worked at various places like a coal mine, railway bridge, construction site, and the construction site of a chemical plant. He was a bachelor. His needs were simple and he was able to adjust himself to all kinds of odd conditions, whether it was an ill equipped circuit house or a makeshift canvas tent in the middle of a stone quarry. But one asset he had was his cook, Ishwaran. The cook was quite attached to Mahendra and followed him uncomplainingly wherever he was posted. He cooked for Mahendra, washed his clothes, and chatted away with his master at night. He could weave out endless stories and anecdotes on varied subjects. Yes. As Mahendra was unmarried, he did not have a family. He was able to live in these temporary quarters provided at the construction sites. He was accompanied by his cook Ishwaran. He was very close to Mahendra. Here, makeshift means what? A temporary canvas, temporary tents. And anecdotes means short, amusing story about a real incident. Iswaran was very good in saying this type of anecdotes and stories. Ishwaran also had an amazing capacity to produce vegetables and cooking ingredients seemingly out of nowhere in the middle of a desolate landscape with no shops visible for miles around. He would miraculously conjure up the most delicious dishes made with fresh vegetables within an hour of arriving at the zinc sheet shelter at the new workplace. Mahendra tells Ganesh that Ishwaran was a great cook. As they lived at places which was not inhabited by many people, in temporary shelters with roofs made of metallic sheets. What happened? Even though they lived in a desolate landscape, Mahendra brought vegetables and all the ingredients for cooking and did the dishes very deliciously. Okay. Here, desolate means empty, empty. No one were there. And conjure up means create with magic. Okay. Then, third paragraph Mahendra would be up early in the morning and leave for work after breakfast, carrying some prepared food with him. Meanwhile, Ishwaran would tidy up the shed, wash the clothes, and have a leisurely bath, pouring several buckets of water over his head, muttering a prayer all the while. It would be lunchtime by then. After eating, he would read for a while before dozing off. Dozing off means sleeping. Yes, dear. The book was usually some popular Tamil thriller running to hundreds of pages. Its imaginative descriptions and narrative flourishes would hold Ishwaran in thrall. In thrall means what? Influence. He was influenced by that Tamil novels and characters. Okay, yes, muttering means here speaking into a low voice. What happened? Mahendra would wake up early in the morning, get ready, and leave for work after eating his breakfast. He would carry his lunch along with him. After he left, Ishwaran would clean their living place, wash Mahendra's clothes, and have a nice bath. He would eat his lunch and read his favorite book in Tamil language. Yes, dear. His own descriptions were greatly influenced by the Tamil authors that he read. When he was narrating even the smallest of incidents, he would try to work in suspense and a surprise ending to the account. For example, instead of saying that he had come across an uprooted tree on the highway, he would say with eyebrows suitably arched and hands held out in a dramatic gesture, the road was deserted and I was all alone. Suddenly, I spotted something that I looked like an enormous bushy beast lying sprawled across the road. I was half inclined to turn and go back, but as I came closer, I saw that it was a fallen tree with its dry branches spread out. Mahendra would stretch himself back in his canvas chair and listen to Ishwaran's tales uncritically. Uncritically means what? Without saying yes or no, without criticism. He just listened the story. Okay, Ishwaran had the habit to explain an incident not only vividly, he had exaggerated the incident very nicely. Okay, yes. As Iswaran read stories with a detailed description, he narrated them in the same way. Mahendra recollects that he would narrate even a small incident with a lot of suspense and surprise, which made it very interesting for the listener. Although he knew that some of the stories were not true, but the way in which Iswaran narrated them was so interesting that Mahendra would not say anything and listen to him quietly. The place I come from is famous for timber. Ishwaran would begin. There is a richly wooded forest all around. The logs are hauled on to the lorries by elephants. Hauled means here transported. Yes. They are huge, well fed beasts. Who? The elephants. When they turn wild, even the most experienced mammoth is not able to control them. After this prologue, Ishwaran would launch into an elaborate anecdote involving an elephant. What happened? Prologue means here introductory speech. He has given an introductory speech about an elephant. Then he started his story. What happened? Mahendra recollects another story told by Ishwaran. This introductory session was followed by a detailed story involving an elephant. Mahendra narrated these incidents to whom? Ganesh. Yes. One day, a tusker escaped from the timber yard and began to roam about, stamping on bushes, tearing up wild creepers, and breaking branches at will. You know, sir, how an elephant behaves when it goes mad. Ishwaran would get so caught up in the excitement of his own story that he would get up from the floor and jump about, stamping his feet in emulation of the mad elephant. Emulation means here copying and imitating how that elephant did. In order to make his story more effective, Ishwaran stood up and jumped around the place, hitting his foot on the ground in order to copy the actions of the mad elephant. SDS. The elephant reached the outskirts of our town, breaking the fences down like matchsticks. He would continue. It came into the main road and smashed all the stalls selling fruits, mud pots, and clothes. People ran helter skelter in panic. Helter skelter means what? Here and there. The elephant now entered a school ground where children were playing. Breaking through the brick wall, all the boys ran into the classrooms and shut the doors tight. The beast grunted. Grunted means here made a loud sound, trumpeted, yes, and wandered about, pulling out the football goalpost, tearing down the volleyball net, kicking and flattening the drum kept for water, and uprooting the shrubs. Meanwhile, all the teachers had climbed up to the terrace of the school building. From there, they helplessly watched the depredations. Depredations means what? That destroy. Yeah, the elephant destroying the things, no? That is called depredations. The actions to destroy something. Yes, of the elephant. There was not a soul below on the ground. The streets were empty as if the inhabitants of the entire town had suddenly disappeared. What happened? There was not even a single person to be seen around. All the streets of the town were empty as all the people was scared of the mad elephant. Yes. I was studying in the junior class at that time. I means here Ishwaran, yes, and was watching the whole drama from the rooftop. I don't know what came over me suddenly. I grabbed a cane from the hands of one of the teachers and ran down the stairs and into the open. The elephant grunted and menacingly means what here? Making threatening, yes, threateningly swung a branch of a tree which it held in its trunk. It stamped its feet, kicking up a lot of mud and dust. I looked frightening, but I moved slowly towards it, stick in hand. People were watching the scene, hypnotized. Hypnotized means what? Speech bound. They not at all. They somewhat. What is that? Putting together inside. They not all move here and there, mesmerized from nearby housetops. Housetops means here the terrace. The elephant looked at me red eyed, ready to rush towards me. It lifted its trunk and trumpeted loudly. At that moment, I moved forward and, mustering all my force, whacked its third toenail on the quick. The beast looked stunned for a moment, then it shivered from head to foot and collapsed. Collapsed means fell down, fainted. At the time of the incident, Ishwaran was studying in one of the junior classes in the school. Ishwaran hit the mad elephant's third toenail quickly. It fainted and fell on the ground unconscious. At this point, Ishwaran would leave the story unfinished and get up, mumbling, I will be back after lighting the gas and warming up the dinner. Mahendra, who had been listening with rapt attention, would be left hanging. What happened? Rapt attention means here spellbound. Who listened? Mahendra listened the story. What is it? With rapt attention, with speechless. When he returned, Ishwaran would not pick up the thread of the story right way. Ishwaran did not start the story. Mahendra would have to remind him that the conclusion was pending. Then Mahendra insisted him to say the end of the story, conclusion of the story. Well, a veterinary doctor was summoned to revive the animal. Ishwaran would shrug casually. Shrug means what? Shake his shoulders casually. 2 days later, it was led away by its mouth to the jungle. What happened? Ishwaran would just say casually that a veterinary doctor was called to bring the elephant back to consciousness, and after 2 days, the mouth would take the elephant back to the jungle. Well, how did you manage to do it, Ishwaran? How did you bring around the beast? Who asked? Mahendra asked Ishwaran. Then Ishwaran replied, it has something to do with a Japanese art, I think, sir. Karate or jujitsu. It is called jujitsu, also a martial art that unarmed combat, that means fight without weapon. I had read about it somewhere. It temporarily paralyzes the nervous system, you see. What happened? Ishwaran said that he performed a Japanese martial art. Yes. Exaggeration. Yes. Not a day passed without Ishwaran recounting some story packed with adventure, horror, and suspense. Whether the story was credible or not, whether the story was believed on or not. Mahendra enjoyed listening to it because of the inimitable way. Inimitable way means what? Unique way in which it was told by Ishwaran. Ishwaran seemed to more than make up for the absence of a TV in Mahendra's living quarters. Every day he would narrate one or the other story full of adventure, horror, and thrill. One morning, when Mahendra was having breakfast, Ishwaran asked, can I make something special for dinner tonight, sir? After all, today is an auspicious day. According to tradition, we prepare various delicacies to feed the spirits of our ancestors today, sir. Ishwaran said that one day he told that he could prepare a special meal for the souls of the dead elders of that family. Yes. That night, Mahendra enjoyed the most delicious dinner and complimented Iswaran on his culinary skills. Culinary skills means here cooking skills. He seemed very pleased but unexpectedly launched into a most garish account involving the supernatural. Garish means here that is main account of that. He started to say a story. He started to say an incident, that main account involving the supernatural. You know, sir, this entire factory area we are occupying was once a burial ground, he started. Mahendra was jerked out of the pleasant reverie he had drifted into after the satisfying meal. What happened? He came out from the daydream. I knew on the first day itself when I saw a human skull lying on the path. Even now, I come across a number of skulls and bones. Ishwaran, Continued. Ishwaran said to Mahendra that the site of the factory was earlier a place where the dead were buried. He told that he had come across a number of skulls and bones lying around the place. He went to narrate how he sometimes saw ghosts at night. I am not easily frightened by these things, sir. I am a brave fellow, but one horrible ghost of a woman which appears off and on at midnight during the full moon. It is an ugly creature with matted hair and a shriveled face, like a skeleton holding a fetus in its arms. What happened? He explained about a woman ghost. Tangled means what here? Twisted. Shriveled means wrinkled. Here, her face was wrinkled. And muttered head means here twisted untidily. That is tangled hair. Muttered hair. And then fetus means what? Unborn baby. Yes. Mahendra shivered at the description and interrupted rather sharply. You are crazy, Iswaran. There are no such things as ghosts or spirits. It is all a figment of your imagination. What he told, everything your own production only, your production of your imagination. Get your digestive system examined and maybe your head as well. You are talking nonsense. Who said nonsense? Mahendra, yes. What happened? Iswaran added that sometimes he saw a ghost at night. It was very ugly, had muttered hair and a shrunken, withered face. It looked like a skeleton holding an unborn baby in its arms. Then Mahendra disliked that story and interrupted sharply. He scolded Iswaran and said that he had gone mad. Yes. He left the room and retired for the night, expecting Iswaran to sulk for a couple of days. Sulk means what? Be silent. Yes, because Mahendra scolded him. Yes. But the next morning he was surprised to find the cook as cheerful and talkative as ever. But what? His surprise, he was talkative only. The cook was talkative only. Yes, Mahendra had thought that Ishwaran would remain quiet for a few days as he had scolded him, no? Yes, that previous night he scolded him. But what happened? The next after that, he became normal. Who became normal? Yes, Ishwaran became normal. From that day on, Mahendra, for all his brave talk, went to bed with a certain unease. Every night he peered into the darkness outside through the window next to his bed, trying to make sure that there was no movement of dark shapes in the vicinity. But he could only see a sea of darkness with the twinkling lights of the factory miles away. Vicinity means what? A nearby area. Mahendra showed that he was very brave, but on that contrary, he was uneasy because of the story Iswaran had narrated about the female ghost. Yes. He had always liked to admire the milk white landscape on full moon nights. But after hearing Iswaran's story of the female ghost, he avoided looking out of his window altogether when the moon was full. Who? Mahendra. Yes. Before listening the story of Ishwaran, he liked to admire, Mahendra liked to admire the full moon nights. Now he stopped looking out on that night as he was, yes, afraid, bumping into the ugly female ghost. Yes. One night, Mahendra was woken up from his sleep by a low moan close to his window, crying sound. Yes. At first, he put it down to a cat prowling around for mice. What he thought? He thought that some cat searching around for mice. Prowling means here searching. But the sound was too guttural for a cat. Guttural means what? Somewhat harsh sound. He resisted the curiosity to look out, lest he should behold a sight which would stop his heart. But the wailing became louder and less feline. Feline means what? Cat family. He thought that that is not a cat family. Yes, wailing means what here? The crying sound. He could not resist the temptation anymore. Lowering himself to the level of the windowsill, he looked out at the white sheet of moonlight outside. There, not too far away, was a dark, cloudy form clutching a bundle. Mahendra broke into a cold sweat and fell back on the pillow, panting. As he gradually recovered from the ghastly experience, he began to reason with himself and finally concluded that it must have been some sort of auto suggestion, some trick that his subconscious had played on him. What happened? Ghastly means what here? Horror, very horror. At first he panicked. After some time, he recovered from the scary experience and thought that probably his subconscious mind was showing him the ghost as he had been thinking of it. Then he assured himself that actually there was no ghost and his mind was playing a trick on him. By the time he had got up in the morning, had a bath, and come out to have his breakfast, the horror of the previous night had faded from his memory. Ishwaran greeted him at the door with his lunch packet and his bag. Just as Mahendra was stepping out, Iswaran grinned and said, grinned means what? Smiled broadly and said, Sir, remember the other day when I was telling you about the female ghost with the fetus in its arms, you were so angry with me for imagining things. Well, you saw her yourself last night. I came running, hearing the sound of moaning that was coming from your room. Yes, he had forgotten the ghostly experience of the previous night. Who? Mahendra. Iswaran smiled and said about the previous night incident. He had heard Mahendra's cries the previous night. Who had heard? Iswaran. A chill went down Mahendra's spine. Spine means here backbone. He did not wait for Ishwaran to complete his sentence. He hurried away to his office and handed in his papers, resolving to leave the haunted place the very next day. Handed in his papers means he decided to resign the job. Resolving means here deciding. Yes. Iswaran's command scared Mahendra. Once again, he decided to resign his job and leave the haunted place. We will see the question answers, dears, now. First question: in what way is Iswaran an asset to Mahendra? Iswaran is an asset to Mahendra as he accompanies him everywhere. He cooks food for him, washes his clothes, cleans the living place, and entertains him with his unique stories. Number two, how does Iswaran describe the uprooted tree on the highway? What effect does he want to create in his listeners? Ishwaran was greatly influenced by the Tamil authors. He was in the habit of creating suspense. He had the quality of narrating even the smallest incident in impressive way. He presented the incident related to the uprooted tree on the highway in a dramatic way. He was alone and the road was deserted. He saw something that looked like an enormous beast lying across the road. But as soon as he came closer, he found there nothing but a fallen tree. His main purpose was to create suspense and surprise. Number three, how does he narrate the story of the tusker? Does it appear to be plausible? He narrates the story of the tusker with great confidence. First, he builds up a small background for it. What he said first. Firstly, he gave an introduction that his village was surrounded by a dense forest. The wood was processed at the timber yards, and the logs of timber were transported onto the lorries by elephants. He added that the beasts were huge, and in case one of them went mad, it could not be controlled even by an experienced mouth. He would get so caught up in the excitement of his own story that he would get up from the floor and jump about, stamping his feet in emulation of the mad elephant. He put in a lot of effort to make it engrossing for the listener. Yes. Then, fourth one, why does the author say that Iswaran seemed to more than make up for the absence of a TV in Mahendra's living quarters? Iswaran is a good narrator. He is also an entertainer like TV. Iswaran builds up suspense slowly. This affects Mahendra. Then he starts taking interest in his stories. This is all like the TV. So Mahendra does not need it. Yes. Then fifth one, Mahendra calls ghosts or spirits a figment of the imagination. What happens to him on a full moon night? Yes. Mahendra calls ghosts or spirits a figment of the imagination as he did not believe in ghosts. One day, Yisuran told him about a female ghost holding a fetus in her arms. On a full moon night, he woke up from his sleep and looked outside the window. He got shocked to see the same figure and began to sweat profusely. Yes, dear. Then, sixth one, can you think of some other ending for the story? Yes, that is your own response. You can write your own ending. Yes, dears. I hope you have enjoyed this interesting story. I will meet you with another one beautiful story in the next virtual class. Until then, bye from your English teacher. Bye, dears. Take care.